Hey, welcome to Vortex Garage. Today we're going to talk a little bit about batteries. And as you can tell, we've got a little bit to talk about. Well, I've got 5 batteries lined up here, and 4 of them are similar brand and 1 of them is a little bit different. So we're going to talk a little bit today about a little bit of battery technology, a little bit about testing batteries and my experiences with different types of batteries, some thoughts about the winter, things choosing batteries, and then we might talk a little bit about battery chargers after that. So let's go ahead and get into why I'm doing this video. So if you do follow Vortex Garage on Instagram, you probably caught a couple posts in the past where I've had some problems with batteries from Johson Controls. And I might have gone on a little bit of a rant on one of those posts because, quite frankly, I've had a few of them recently that I've had to exchange with less than a year of service. And that kind of got me a little bit frustrated and I complained a little bit. And that's also why this battery is sitting right here. So what we're going to do is really talk about these batteries and talk a little bit about this one right here, and you'll learn a little bit about where batteries come from. Well, let's start with that, all right? That's kind of a weird statement, right? Where do batteries come from? This isn't a birds and the bees about batteries at all. But in all honesty, like many other things in the in industry right now and whatnot, there's only a couple makers who make the majority of the things that you sell, and they all get rebranded. I remember back in the day, and it's probably still the same with laptops, there was only like 2 or 3 there were only 2 or 3 companies that built laptops, but there were, 20 different brands, if not more. So the same thing goes with batteries. Now, here in the US, you go to a parts store, you go to even Interstate Batteries nowadays, all these other places, Die Hard, O'Reilly's, Advance, AutoZone, you got all these stores, even your local shop, you buy a battery, Napa, Walmart. I keep thinking of places. You can tell I'm doing this with no script, right? So when you go to any of these places, there's generally 2 main companies that are making batteries, Johson Controls, and I believe it's East Penn. I know somebody's going to probably tell me I'm wrong, and I didn't do the research before this video to remember exactly who makes what, but I can tell you that these Autocraft batteries, which you can buy at Advance Auto, these are Johson Control batteries. Now I think Exide is now East Penn, Deca is an East Penn brand. I think Interstate sells some Johson Controls now. You can tell, don't go by what I'm saying here. I'm not here to tell you who makes every brand of battery, if it's a Johson Control or an East Penn. You can look that up. You just Google who makes Autocraft batteries, who makes Napa batteries, who makes Walmart batteries, and you'll pretty much find out who their supplier is for those batteries. Now, it doesn't also mean that each manufacturer that sells these doesn't have a specification that they give to, say, Johson Controls and says, hey, I'd like you to, build them a little differently. I'd like you to, add this or that, make the case a little bit different. There might be some variation in between, and there's certainly variation that you can find at the store based on, like for instance, these Autocraft ones, you got the gold, you got the silver, and you've got, I think they sell something called, it's not Autocraft. I can't remember what it is. They have like a base battery that's very different. And they all have different warranties on them and different cranking amps. And we'll get into that in a second. But the key point here is that for the most part, there's really only a couple manufacturers who make batteries here in the States, and then they just get resold everywhere. So you're really buying an East Penn or a Johson Controls battery. Now granted, there's different types, and we'll get into that. Now this over here is from Batteries Plus. Batteries Plus something, I can't remember what it is. I'll put a text thing on the video probably, or I won't, who knows. But at any rate, this is actually a rebadge of a Northstar battery, and Northstar batteries made in the US. We're going to talk a little bit more about this one in a bit. But what I want to do today, I've got these batteries here. I want to share with you some experiences I've had in a very unscientific way, yet a little bit scientifically, because we're going to be using this Foxwell BT705 battery analyzer. I read that off in case you're interested and you like what you see and you want to pick one up. That's what I did. I got tired of having battery issues and not knowing if the battery was good and listening to the crank and putting a multimeter on it and reading voltage. This will actually read the cranking amps and do other electrical system health on your car. Pretty handy tool. Anyway, what I've got here is some older batteries and some newer batteries. And when I say this isn't scientific, yeah, we're going to actually show you what the ratings are of these batteries based on the analyzer. But I'm not going to sit here and say that Johson Control batteries are junk. All right, I know I might have ranted a little bit on Instagram, but in all realities, this battery right here is manufactured in 2012, and it's still kicking, okay? This one, 2015, little story to it, but still kicking right now. And then these are a lot newer. So what I am gonna talk about today, well, actually I kind of forgot my train of thought there, but I'm gonna try to do this without editing too much. The point being is that the ones that make sense in my rant and that I could show you like empirical data are ones that I've already returned and exchanged. So there's not much I can do there. And in fact, the one that I had, I actually tried to exchange it and they wouldn't exchange that battery that had failed in less than 6 months because I had already replaced one. The whole time I maybe gotten a year and a half out of these two batteries, and they have 3-year full replacement warranties, but they wouldn't replace the replacement. So I ended up taking that as a core to pick this one up. So I don't have that one anymore. That one had a magical 1 volt that it was giving off. It obviously was a big failure within the battery, which is something that happens. So the point is, I don't have the nasty ones. The bad ones are gone. They either went to be cores or were exchanged for one of these. So, but what we will do is we'll go ahead and show you and run the analyzer on them. I don't want to talk too much because well, it's going to be a 30-minute video. You know me. I talk a lot. If you're here for detail, enjoy it. If you want to skip around, skip around. All right, let me set some things up. I'll be right back. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, before we go ahead and test these batteries, there's a few things that are important to know about batteries. Now, you have different types of batteries. You have your flooded, you have your AGM, and then you have gel and lithium batteries. And we're not really going to talk about the gel and lithium batteries today. We're going to focus on the difference between the flooded and lead acid and the AGM lead acid. So flooded basically is what this is. There's essentially in here, there are plates within this battery, and then it is flooded with the electrolyte, the acid, the battery acid as it's known to be. And it is that combination that generates the charge in the battery. And that's what delivers the electrons from positive to negative and gives you the battery. So these, if you flip them upside down, they have the caps on the top, they can leak out. They're not bad. It's just, that's how batteries generally started out. Some of the earliest designs were flooded. So again, you can go to a battery channel, do some more Googling, find a ton of information about how these are constructed, how they work and something like that. We're not necessarily going to get into that just by the plain fact that these batteries, and if you hear the term a flooded or regular lead acid battery, a regular, it's usually a flooded lead acid battery like this. Now the one we have over here, which we'll show more as close as when we get to it, this is an AGM. AGM stands for absorbed glass mat. So rather than having the giant plates and the flooded, plates that are in there, it uses a mat that is absorbed with that liquid. And it's a little bit different in construction. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not an expert on how AGM batteries are built. Now, your Optimas, you see the commercials for those, the spiral cell AGM. Well, this is another type of AGM here. Same deal, AGM absorbed glass mat. So that's kind of the differences there. So what we're going to do, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about each battery, give you a little bit of background on its work history, what it's been doing, and then we're going to run a test on it, compare it to its setting. But before we do that, let's talk about what you normally see on a battery. And hopefully one of these is going to show that, but I'm not sure if I have the camera set up right. Anyway, this battery, if I look at it, it's got 935 cranking amps at 32F, and then it has 750 at 0. So that's probably something you've heard, right? Cold cranking amp, CCA. That's an industry standard term for comparing batteries. And well, what does that mean? So, and which of these numbers is cold cranking amps? Because 32 degrees, that's cold, right? But 0 is even colder. Well, quite frankly, or not quite frankly, the way it is, you can tell I'm doing this without a script, I don't want to cut. That 935, the 32 degrees, that is your cranking amps. The 750 at 0, that is your cold cranking amps. Now some batteries, they don't necessarily say that, but this one is nice enough to give you that. So it says cranking amps at 32F and cold cranking amps at 0F. So we're going to be comparing cold cranking amps on these batteries using this analyzer tool. So we're going to focus on that 750 as a baseline for this Autocraft Silver. All right, now these are all group 65, so they're the same size battery, which is nice. So they're a pretty good comparative difference between them. Now I weighed them all as well. So as we go through, we're going to show you what the weight is. We'll tell you what the cold cranking amps are, and then we'll give you some history of the age, and we'll run the test. So let's do that with this one. All right, so 750 cold cranking amps. This was manufactured in 2012, 11/2012, November 2012. So it is about a little over 7 years old. So a little over 7 years old on a battery. That's awesome that this thing's still got a charge to it. And we're going to run this. I think it's going to hold its own. I'm going to tell you, this is a workhorse of a battery right here. Now this battery weighs 43 pounds. And well, let's hook up our tool and see what we can do here. Not much of a backstory on this one, to be honest with you, except that it is old and it's still working and it's pretty awesome. Oh, and for each of them, I did wire brush the terminals to give them all an equal chance. That's not the most scientific thing. There's tons of non-scientific stuff going on here, so don't get me wrong. I'm just doing a fun video. But I think you can still learn some things. All right, so we're gonna go to our tool here. So as soon as you hook it up, it powers up off the battery. And as you can see, we've got 12.5 volts. So we're gonna go, just hit our enter button. We're in a 12 volt system. It's out of the vehicle. Now, if it was in the vehicle, we could run that and it would actually do some alternator charging tests. This thing's really nice. It detects a static charge on the battery. So say you had just driven, and it'll have you turn on and turn off the headlights in a timed manner to kind of get an idea of what the base voltage should be and get rid of that static charge. This thing's, I'm pretty impressed by it, to be honest with you. Okay, so out of vehicle. It's a top post. It's regular, see AGM or gel, but this is a regular. And we're gonna go by the CCA or cold cranking amps. Now this one, we're gonna lower that down to 750. And this is really to baseline it, because right here, if you had a Bluetooth printer, say you had a shop, you could actually send this to a printer and give it to your customer when you were done. Okay, so it's gonna go ahead and test the battery. All right, and it wants to know if it's above 0C or below 0C. Well, it's above. It's about 65 degrees in here. All right, so there we go. So 12.49 volts, 594 cold cranking amps is what it measured, and it's rated for 750. So was that 594? Yeah, 594. So about 600 cold cranking amps are left in this battery in its current state. Oh, should have mentioned, I know I'm talking a lot, but I charged all these batteries equally to make sure that they were good. So they've all gone through a full charge over the last couple days with the same charger. So we should be on level playing field with them. Again, not the most scientific thing, but hey. All right, pretty good, I'm impressed. 594, it says it's a good recharge. Well, this one has been recharged. And so it's probably not really holding as much voltage as it could. We could probably put this through a repair cycle with a charger and maybe get a better reading off of it. But for right now, 594 CCA. All right, we're going to move on. So my goal is to move the batteries without moving that thing. Because ideally, I won't have to move the cameras. Ah, did you see that? It fell right off. Yep. All right, let me just make sure it's on in this frame. Oh yeah, it's good. Okay, so let's plug this one in. This is an Autocraft Gold. Now these are rated a little higher, and that's kind of one of the things they do. Two things you normally see on the gold versus silver versus whatever. And I think they have a platinum now, which is an AGM actually. One of the things that you see is when the warranty. So this one is a 3-year free replacement, or so they say, but I'll tell you, that's one free replacement. If the replacement you get conks out within that 3-year time frame, doesn't matter, they won't return it. At least that's what I had happen to me. So maybe it was a one-off case, who knows. But anyway, the other thing is you usually get more cranking amps out of it. Sure enough, this is 1,000 cranking amps and 850 cold cranking amps. All right, so this one also, believe it or not, 43 pounds, same weight. And oh, here's the one I wanted to talk about. This one actually is kind of cool. All right, so one of the reasons we're going to talk about chargers, this is from 2015, and this one conked out earlier this year, and it was one of the replacements I got. It was probably about a year ago, actually, time flies. But I ended up coring another battery that I had from another car, and I get leftover batteries all the time. I don't know how. I end up with more batteries than cores, but I do. Anyway, I cored that other battery and kept this one because I wanted to use it in the old tractor. I wanted to have a spare battery too. So anyway, this one was dead last week when I checked it. It had, I think when I ran it on the analyzer, it had 80 cold cranking amps. So I put it on this charger, and this is what we're going to talk about later. This is a relatively new charger here in the shop because I dropped and broke my other one, which again, if you're on Instagram, you've seen that. And I put it on the repair cycle. And I did the full repair cycle on this, and we're going to run that and see what it is. Now, I did the repair cycle over a week ago, and I went ahead and did, yesterday I threw it on the charger again. In 30 minutes, it went into float mode and said it was charged. So 12.61 volts. So this has more static volts sitting than the silver did. Granted, the silver is a lot older, but still this one, remember, has been sitting for who knows how long, completely dead with almost nothing from it, went through a repair cycle. So let's go ahead and check it. So same deal, we're gonna go through the menus, 12 volt, out of vehicle, top post, regular. We're gonna do cold cranking amps, so we gotta go back to 850. You can tell the last one I tested was one of these, and we're gonna test it. Interesting. Okay, so this one, it says replace the battery, and it's probably not wrong, right? And it's measuring 565 cold cranking amps. So this battery, which is newer and has a higher capacity than that older one, is actually testing lower. Now, after I took it off the charger, that's why it had 850, I'd thrown it on here, it had like 730 cold cranking amps. So just overnight, just sitting for 24 hours, it's lost more of that. Now I could probably throw it back on the repair cycle on that charger and see if I can get more out of it. But to be honest with you, this one, I'm not going to complain too much about that because this is coming up on a 4.5 year, it's 4 years, a little over 4 years for a battery. Not too bad, you know, and it's past the return period. So what are you going to do? So, but anyway, that's where we're at. So we're at 565 cold cranking amps on this one from October 2015. So I'll probably hold on to this one and, like I said, use it on the tractor. All right, next one up. Who's next? All right, this one is another Autocraft Gold. I know you all want to skip ahead to, you probably want to skip ahead to this one. So maybe I'll put a timestamp in at the end of the video, who knows? Or you'll find it. I'm sure you're resourceful. That's what I do. I wouldn't watch my videos, they're too long. I talk too much. Hey, at least you get to skip around. I got to hear it. All right, there we go. So what's the story on this battery? Well, this battery was a replacement that I got. All these, I don't think, the only one, the next one we're going to look at was actually a bought one, and it was an old replacement that I was happy with. This was a replacement for one that went after about a year. So this was manufactured 12/18. So this one is now about a year old, year and maybe half a month. So year old on this one. And same deal, 850 and 1,000. So 850 cold cranking amps, exact same battery that we just looked at, just a little bit newer. All right, so what is a year-old battery that should be rated at 850 cold cranking amps? What does it measure? Well, 12.93 volts on this, that's good. I remember I just charged it too, you know, yesterday. This one, I topped it off, made sure it was good. Let's see what it rates at. All right, here we go. Ooh, not too bad. 801 cold cranking amps. Now, it's not at its rated capacity, but a year in, it's lost 49 cold cranking amps. Not exactly sure how thrilled I am with that, but at any rate, that's a year-old battery, not quite measuring up to what it should, but not necessarily at a place it should be replaced. So this is a good battery. And as far as this thing goes, from its perspective, from what it's rated at to what it should be, it's still counting this a good battery. And honestly, if you walk up to any car with one of these batteries in it and test it, that's pretty good. I'm happy about that. This battery is running fine. So you're probably wondering what cars all these came out of. Well, quite frankly, like I said, one of them is for the tractor, and I think I have a spare beyond that. So I think I have 2 spares. But otherwise, if you buy enough Fords, or you get enough Fords used, or secondhand, or third hand, or fourth hand, however you get them, trucks and some of the big sedans use these Group 65s. Okay, so this one is from July 2019, and this was a replacement from a battery that came in a used car I bought. Bought the car 3.5 years ago. The battery was about a year old that was in it. So that battery lasted for almost 5 years, 4.5 years. And it conked out. It was running great. I remember I took the car in here and cleaned it and detailed it. And just by having the doors open and hitting the key and having the lights come on, I went to start and it didn't want to start. So luckily it did it here. It let me know. So this is that replacement. It is 6 months old, barely 6 months old, not even really. Okay, so let's see what a half-a-year-old battery is going to do. Same deal, 850 cold cranking amps, so it'll be easy to run through this. Ooh, 12.6 volts. Heck, that other battery had higher static volts, but anyway, let's run the test. And this is in a daily driver too. Oh, it is above. That's not a good sign. When it's asking that, that tells me that it's like, hey, I'm not really sensing enough cranking amps here. Is it frozen or isn't it? So, all right, let's see. Run that test again. Ooh, 748 cold cranking amps. That means this thing has lost 100 cold cranking amps. It's rated as a good recharge. And this is a 6-month-old battery in a daily driver, and I ran this thing, and I've tested the system on it. It has a perfectly fine charging system. So that is kind of summing up what frustrates me about these batteries recently, is that how can you have a 6-month-old one of these that is rated, that's in a daily driver, that has the exact same type of charging system as that battery that's a year old and is not being driven daily, and somehow this one's worse. So still good, but this is one of the reasons we're actually testing these. And what I plan to do is this one, which came out of another car, is going to be swapped with this one. So this is going to go into the daily driver, and I can't wait. Let's run that one next. All right, so I'm a little bummed out about that because, man, 6 months old. All right, so let's talk about this battery really quick. So this is a battery from Batteries Plus, and it is a Northstar battery. It's made by Northstar. I think it says that even on it. It's made in the USA, and this is about $100 more than the Autocraft Golds. Now, I'll tell you this, little tip for you. If you go to Advance Auto, I don't know about the other stores, Advance Auto, I know AutoZone does it too. Definitely Advance Auto. Don't go in and just buy it and pay at the register. If you got a smartphone, sit in your car, order it online at the store, and look for Advance Auto coupons. You can always find at least a 20%, sometimes a 25% off coupon. Works on batteries up to $50, up to $50 total off. Go do that, you get 25%, walk in and pick it up. All right, so you're getting 20% off of one of those batteries, but Batteries Plus is the same thing. When I ordered this, I think it was a 25% discount. Ordered online, picked up in the store. So this is the same, Group 65. This is rated at 930 cold cranking amps. And it also gives, we didn't talk about this more, the reserve capacity of 135. Now, believe it or not, let me just look. The reserve capacity on these Golds is 150. Now, I don't remember exactly what reserve capacity ratings are, if they're minutes. I think they might be. But that's basically how long the battery can have a certain amount of draw on it before it needs the charge of the alternator to start the engine, or to basically still have a charge. Now, there's probably a whole lot about reserve capacity that I simply don't know about because I haven't read that. And well, to be fair, I didn't sit here and read the Encyclopedia of Batteries before doing this video. But reserve capacity is an interesting thing to look at. Now, this is a dual-purpose deep cycle. If you've heard that before and you've seen those like blue top ones, the deep cycles, well, what does that mean? Well, deep cycle basically means it can withstand a deeper discharge and recharge cycle. So typically with a starting battery, you get a lot of volts, or a lot of amps, a lot of amps. And the whole point is you start the car and it lasts for a couple seconds, unless you got a jalopy and it takes a minute. But once that high draw cranking of the engine is done, then it's just running the computers, running the car, running your stereo, stuff like that. It's not that huge of a draw. Now, a deep cycle, and you often see these in marine, is when you're using the battery for marine purposes, like an electric trolling motor or something like that. But in vehicles, something with a big stereo, where you have the car off for a lot and you're not running the engine, it'll drain down a little more and come back. Now, with these other batteries, you drain them dead, they start sulfating very quickly. And that's kind of one of the big problems with these batteries. If they ever die, that's it. The first time those are dead, they never get capacity back. They're cut in half. I say that without running this, so that was a guess. Anyway, what I've experienced with those, though, if one of those goes dead, I'm pretty much done with it. Now, I did repair the one, and it's doing pretty good, but still. So anyway, this is a dual-purpose deep cycle. That means this is still a starting battery, but it also has deep cycle properties. So good stuff. One of the things you're going to notice as I take these caps off is the brass terminals on here. The terminals are much higher quality. Oh, and the weight. All those batteries, even the newer ones, I was actually thinking the newer ones would be lighter. No, all 43 pounds, every single one of them. This one, 55 pounds. This is 12 pounds heavier than the other batteries. Okay, and it's the same size, the Group 65. You got the brass terminals. All right, now let's do the test and then we'll talk about it. It says rated at 930 amps, 930 cold cranking amps, so I got to reverse these. Now, I bought this 3 weeks ago, and it's been sitting on this table since. That's why there's a nice divot here. And it's been sitting with no charge. I did not charge this one at all. Picked it up off the shelf at the store, took it home, sat here for 3 weeks. We're going to test it. All right, it's 12.84 volts, so that's good. Let's go ahead and run through our tests. So we're doing a 12-volt system out of vehicle, top post, but this time we're going to do an AGM. We're still going to do cold cranking amps, but we're going to bump it up to 930. Okay, and we're going to run it. All right, test it at 1,000 cold cranking amps when it's rated at 930. All right, so let me see if I can get this steady. All right, there we go. Make sure it's still on camera. I don't know, in case I want to flip back, right? But here we go. This battery that's been sitting almost a month, and who knows how long it sat on the shelf at Batteries Plus, is testing higher than its rated amperage. Now, I get it. This is why this isn't scientific. This isn't sitting in the car. It hasn't been in the car after 6 months. It hasn't been sitting in the car for a year. I'll have to retest it. And that's what we'll do. We'll check this battery's health out as it goes in that car. And our baseline will be that battery right there, which 6 months later had lost 100 cold cranking amps. We're going to see how this compares percentage-wise to that one. And we can kind of use this video as a reference. All right. So why did I kind of change and go for this battery? And like I said, this is $100 more. I think out the door it was about $300 for this battery. No, wait, maybe it was lower. Scratch that. I don't remember how much this cost. The point being, I remember telling myself it was $100 more than that battery right there. So it was a fair bit more of an investment. However, this does come with a 5-year free replacement. I don't know how their replacement policy is, and I'm certainly hoping I don't have to find out, but the fact that they're willing to put a 5-year 100% reimbursement on this is pretty impressive. Also made in the USA, it's the AGM. This is a nice battery. So I'm really curious to see if I'm going to be happy with this purchase, and I'll use this to test it as we go along. So we'll find out after 6 months, after a year, how is it rating? How is it doing? And what I might do from this point is stop having all the difficulties with these other batteries and just get these for the vehicles that I use for the most, and make the investment. And that's kind of what this video is for, is to share with you that if you're making an investment in a battery for your car, you know, what are the options that are out there? You're really looking at the 2 manufacturers plus some of these other manufacturers. This isn't a Johson Control. It's not an East Penn. It's made by Northstar, made by a whole separate company. So definitely check these out. I'll check it out and I'll tell you how it goes. So come back in 6 months and we'll see. But we're not done here. We're going to talk a little more. So what I'm going to do with this battery, I knew that was coming. All right, so what we're going to do with this battery, I'm going to go ahead and kind of do a waterfall thing here. We're going to put this battery, the best one, in the daily driver, the one that I really need to trust. So this is going to go in the daily driver, and then we're going to have the next good one. The next best one is going to go back where it belongs, because it was actually in the Marauder. That's going to go back in the Marauder, which you can see a few pictures on our Instagram for. I don't think we've done a video with the Marauder. And then the third one is going to go in the old Expedition. And the silver was in the Expedition because that's the one that died. And I had the silver sitting under the bench, pulled it out, tested good. I threw it in the Expedition just to get me down the road. And then we devised this whole scheme of swapping batteries. And then we have the extra, which goes to the tractor. And then I think I end up with one extra, and that's because that silver, I have no idea where I got that one. It's been under the bench for a while. I mean, the old Mountaineer used it. I probably swapped that battery and kept it. That's probably where it came from. Also, I've had a couple WJs come through the shop. WJs use Group 65s. They all use the same battery, so it's from one of those. All right, so this battery analyzer, very cool. Definitely enjoy it. This is about $100 from Amazon if you're looking to get something like that. Honestly, if you're just somebody who wants to know if your car battery's good, it's not worth $100 to find out. Go to any of the stores. They can test it using something similar to this. But if you're running a shop or you're really interested, or you have a lot of stuff come through and you want to be able to test batteries, especially if you have a lot of things passing through, it's a neat thing to have. All right, we're going to regroup and talk about chargers. Hey, so if you're still awake, we're going to talk about battery chargers. Now, I got to look at it this way. If you're still awake, then you probably want to hear all this detailed talk about battery chargers. And hey, if I put you to sleep ranting about batteries for quite a while, well, you probably would have fallen asleep through this anyway, so you're not missing anything. But that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to have a nice, good Vortex Garage style detailed talk about battery chargers with no script, where I'll probably just go off on tangents and, well, there I go on a tangent. Anyway, what I got in front of me here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 types of battery chargers. And they are ones I've collected over the years. And, well, they all kind of serve a different purpose and act and do things a little bit differently. So, you know, a shop might need several different types of battery chargers for different situations. Somebody who has a collector car might need one for a certain way, or someone who just is late for work on a Monday morning and their car won't start probably needs one for a different purpose. So that's why we're going to talk about these. What makes them different? What use cases and scenarios are good for? And, you know, if you're in the market for one, maybe it'll help you pick out the style that you need. And I'll share my, you know, what I've seen with these. So I do have one more. It's actually sitting on a car, and I can't pull it off right now without wasting a whole bunch of time, but it's a C-Tech battery tender. And it's very similar to this one, just a little bit better electronics. And I really like that C-Tech one. But let's start there, battery tenders. Okay, this is a battery tender right here. This is from Tractor Supply. It's a Schumacher. It's a 1.5 amp battery tender. And they call it a speed charge, but I wouldn't call it that. If you had a low battery or whatever and put this on it, it would take weeks if it ever did finish charging it. So what is a battery tender compared to, say, if you've heard the term a trickle charger? Because that's not what this is. This is not a trickle charger. Now, a trickle charger, in the pure sense of the term, was a low rate charger, something that was a small amperage delivery, like a 1.5 or a 2 amp delivery. The problem with a trickle charger is you would plug in a trickle charger and it would deliver that charge of 1.5 amps, and it didn't care what it was doing, it would deliver it. You got me plugged into the wall, I'm going to deliver the 1.5 amps. What do you want from me? The problem is that once that battery's charged, batteries, these lead acid batteries, they don't have circuitry in them like modern lithium ion to say, hey, I'm done, stop sending me power. No, so you got this battery that doesn't know, it just keeps getting the power, the charger keeps giving it power, and eventually just kills the battery. So a trickle charger is not a battery tender. So if you've got an old classic or a car you don't drive very often, your weekend racer or whatever, don't buy a trickle charger and put it on it. I honestly think it's probably hard to find a trickle charger nowadays. And again, this one sort of almost fits the bill, and we'll talk about that one in a second. But a battery tender is what you want. And that's exactly what it does. It tends to the battery. The battery tenders, what makes them different is that they have circuitry within them that reads the health of the battery and will put a charge to the battery when it needs it, and will stop and maintain the battery when it doesn't. That helps too if there's temperature variations, things like that. A battery tender will keep that battery living longer. Now, I mentioned the Marauder. The Marauder used to be my daily driver. For a couple years now, it's been a weekend car. So it sits in the garage, doesn't get driven that much during the week. It has an air suspension in the back. And those Panther cars are known as those air suspensions get old, they leak a little more. If you just keep a battery in it, battery's gonna go dead. Battery tender, as long as I got a good battery in there, the tender will keep it alive for years and years and years. So it's just like having a daily driver. Well, that was a silly comment because I don't really know how to back that up. But the point being, a battery tender will keep that car and keep that battery good. And it's very different than a trickle charger. So why would you get one of these? It's, again, you need to maintain that battery. It's a maintainer or tender. And we actually had a video where I showed this and talked about it. And we also talked about the end here. It's got a plug, and you can basically bolt the other end of the plug onto the battery terminals. You pull the car in, you're going to leave it for the week. You just open the hood a little bit, pull the cord out, plug it in, and leave it. You're good to go. So that is the battery tender. I'll try to not be too slow here because I know for some of you, I'm talking so much. Even those of you who find this stuff interesting will still fall asleep. All right, so what do we have here? This is a battery charger, a 6 amp medium and 2 amp low. And this actually, I don't know if you can see even with that one zoomed in a bit, has a 6 volt setting and then 2 12 volt settings. This one made an appearance when I tested the sealed beam headlights. So an older video on Vortex Garage, I used this one to deliver 12 volts. And we tested and used the different amperage delivery to warm up the battery, warm up the sealed beams. I was able to start them at 6 volts and move them to a low amp 12 volt. Well, this battery charger is not a tender. This is a charger. It almost could be described as a trickle charger on the low. I set this on a battery and leave it for a week. It's going to dump whatever amperage the switch is on and voltage to that battery. Doesn't care. So that's essentially what this does. So if you need to charge your battery, and I've used this one and it works perfectly fine, set it up on a battery, run it for a couple hours. It does have a meter that'll show you how the battery's doing in terms of its capacity. You just sort of got to keep an eye on it. So that's this one. Honestly, I don't think I would buy one of these. I think I got this as a gift, and it's great. This is kind of the old style, what you'd expect for years and years that have been around. It delivers a charge, and it does a good job at it. But you got to pay attention to it. So I like it. I don't dislike this battery charger, but if I didn't have one and I was out in the market, I don't think I would pick this. All right. Before we talk about these, because these are a little different, let's talk about this beast right here. All right. So this is a jump box. All right. So this is, again, the scenario of, I don't want to tend my battery. I don't want to keep it going, and I don't need to charge a depleted battery. I want to jumpstart my car because I'm late for work and I don't have jumper cables in another car. I've got my jump box. So this delivers, 300 amps, I think it is. And this has got a 12 volt, I think it's a lead acid battery in it. Yep, it even says 17 amp hour lead acid battery. And well, you put it in, turn it on, and it'll put a little bit more amps in your battery and get you started. Now, if you got a completely dead battery, this thing ain't gonna do it. There's definitely bigger ones out there that maybe will do it, but this one won't. But that's what this is for. This is really just for jump starting the battery. And of course, new features. Yeah, I can run my USB devices on it. So, they've managed to give it other uses. Now, I don't have, and you've probably seen a lot of the lithium ion jump packs now. They're quite a bit smaller than this, and this thing's got some heft to it. So lithium ion ones, they'll even claim that they'll jump 1,000 amp, battery, that they deliver that much. And that's really the nature of lithium ion batteries. They're able to deliver more of an oomph for the size. I guess more amps for the size is probably a little bit more scientific. I don't have one of those, and I got to tell you, I'm slightly leery about them. I would definitely pick a name brand. There's some really good ones out there, and then there's some knockoff ones sold on Amazon all over the day. I would be leery of some of the knockoff ones because, the prospect of leaving a giant, rather large lithium-ion battery sitting in your car, in the shop even, this lithium-ion batteries, when they puncture and there's air, they will burn. And if they're overcharged, they will burn. So you're really relying on the circuitry of that lithium-ion battery to be good and to not cause a fire situation. So those big ones, the big high amp jump boxes, even though they're relatively small, they're the size of a brick, maybe even thinner than that, they do spook me out a little bit, but I'm surprised I don't have one, to be honest with you. So if you're somebody who wants to have one in your house, get a name brand, please. Do your research and get a good one. I'm not sure about leaving it in the car all the time, which I'm sure is the purpose. I think I'd stick with the regular jumper cables, but in today's society, you want to do everything yourself because you don't want to ask the stranger, I guess, but I will scratch that. I don't need to go in the commentary. The point being, though, on these lithium-ion jump packs, if you're looking for something to jump your car that's a lot smaller, they're a good deal. I'm not sure about keeping them in the car if you've got a really diverse climate, a lot of cold and hot cycles. Do your research on that. I'm just not an expert on them. But I can tell you, they've got more oomph than this big beast. This ain't even that big. You see some of the big old jump packs that are out there. All right, so let's talk about this one next. This one is, I'll turn it around so you can read the brand. So Noco Genius. They've got a lot of different chargers out there. Pretty good quality. And these are nice. These are kind of like a tender and a charger put in one. Now this one this is a 3500. They have bigger ones. This will only deliver 3.5 amps. But you can put this on a battery and just leave it clamped on and it'll charge it. It'll detect its situation. You can change its modes. It'll do AGM. It'll do repairs. And you can basically put it out and it'll run through until it charges the battery. And when it gets to the end, it'll maintain the battery. So this again has smart circuitry in it, which will detect the battery's health. And instead of like this one just delivering a charge and being done with it, this one delivers a charge and it'll vary the charge too during a repair to kind of get some of that sulfation or calcification going on it. So I like this. You might notice the electrical tape. I'm not going to really blame Noco on this. The end here got cut or broke. I don't know if it got cut. I don't know how it happened, to be honest with you. I went to use it one time and it zonked out and had some issues and refused to run. And that's kind of nice. One of the things about the smart ones too, if you reverse the polarity on these, it won't run. If you short them out, it won't run. So basically shorted out, wouldn't run, kind of gave me a warning light and I saw the cut and the two wires were touching. I went ahead and just did a little bit of work on it, put some heat shrink on them, resoldered, cleaned it up, put tape over it. It's good to go. This one, you reverse the polarity or you touch them, yeah, it doesn't care. It's delivering those amps no matter what. So I like this. It's also got the fuse in here. Oh, that's what it was. It popped the fuse in the end as well because I did have it hooked up to the battery, so it was still getting juice from that. So handy tool. Here's a situation where it had a failure and it had a fuse. It had smart circuitry. It didn't catch fire. It didn't overheat. Nothing bad happened. Quick repair and it replaced this fuse and it's perfect. So I actually really do like this. Great battery, very safe. I'm happy with it. I think if it was the only one that I had and I went with one of these NOCOs, I'd probably get one of the higher amp ones. They do get a little bit pricier as you get higher up in the amps, but still seem to be good quality. And then there's this one. Now this one is new in the shop. I haven't even wrapped the cords around it. So this is by Ampeak, and I want to say there's a couple different varieties of this out there. Remember when we started this video off, we talked about the laptops being rebranded, and heck, the batteries being rebranded. A lot of tech gets rebranded as well. And I've noticed a lot of tools get rebranded. So this is another situation of that. I've seen multiple rebrands of this device, and this one is from Ampeak, got it off Amazon. I want to say it was about 50 bucks. And again, if you follow my Instagram, you'd know that I had another battery charger that I ended up replacing with this one, which I still may repair, and it's over there, put away. The circuit board on the old one broke when I dropped it, and it was an old Victor 10 amp smart charger. And it was a good one, I liked it. So I wanted another one that had the smart capabilities, and kind of like this one, but this was only a 3.5 amp. I wanted something with more power. And looked at the NOCOs, they got a little expensive. This one, I wanted to give it a shot. So this will do a 10 amp, a 2 amp, an automatic, or even a 25 amp rapid charge. I've not tried the 25 amp because I haven't had a need to, but I have done a repair and I've done a 10 amp charge on it, or the auto charge, and seen it gone to 10 amps. And this is the charger that I ran the repair on that battery that we tested earlier. So this is why I'm already a little impressed with this one, because the repair cycle actually did work. Now the old Victor one that I had, that I may still repair, because I might just glue the circuit board back together and solder the joints back in, but that one, it would do a repair kind of, but if the battery was really bad, it wouldn't even try. It would just give up. So this one, that battery was pretty well shot. And I thought it was just going to give up. And it ran a full repair cycle, came back and claimed it was good. Now that battery's still showing it needs to be replaced, but the fact that it brought a battery back that's been sitting for who knows how long in a completely dead spot, I'm impressed. Pretty happy with it. Have no idea how it'll hold up long term, but you know, it's lightweight. We'll see. It's all plastic. I mean, heck, the Victor, when I dropped it and broke it, so I'm assuming if I drop this one, the same thing will happen. At any rate, pretty happy with it. If you didn't have a battery charger and you were looking for something to, you know, charge your battery up, pretty happy with this. I'd say go for it. I'd say give that a try. I really like the NOCOs. They're a little more. So if you want a little higher quality, go with the NOCO. If you're looking for something just kind of general around the shop, seems to work. I think the 25 amp rapid charge, and it does have a little bit of a start aid to it as well. I don't know how much it'll give with that. This seems to kind of be a good all-around sort of relatively inexpensive unit, whereas something like this NOCO would be, you know, you got a car that you want to charge batteries, you want to maintain her, this is a really good option. So, you know, I like them both. It's hard to say which one I'd have. And then we got this one, which I've had for many years, and this thing has a 200 amp engine start, a 40 amp charge, and I think a 10 and a 12, it'll do 6 volt, and it's got a timer on it. Again, this is a dumb charger. This is like this one on steroids. This one just outputs a lot more juice. But same deal, it's dumb, it doesn't know anything. With the timer, you can set time on it. The thing I don't like about this one, to be honest with you, is, I mean, the start function's pretty decent on it, but a jump box will do that. Especially nowadays, jump boxes replace this. You know, the timer on it, if I really need to charge a battery, it's not that big, it's not that great. I'd rather use this, or I'd rather use that. Quite frankly, I hardly ever use this thing. It's old, it still works, it's built pretty well. I mean, you'll find these things used all the time if you want one. If you need a big battery, you got farm equipment, stuff like that, it's probably good for, you know, those types of batteries. But, you know, for car stuff, I really don't pull this thing out very often. Definitely has its use, but if you know you need it, you know you need it. If you don't know you need it, you probably don't. So that's what we have here for the chargers. Like I said, I don't think there's really too much else to say. All right, so if you're still with us and you're not asleep, then I really appreciate it, because as always, this video is probably way too long than it needs to be. It's probably totally filled with my tangents, but hey, that's really what it is. I do want to apologize though. I recognize this video isn't the most scientific thing in the world, but it is based on experiences that I've had that I'm sharing with you, and it's unscripted. So yeah, there's no graphics and awesome detail, and I didn't necessarily do weeks of research on battery technology and how they're built to really show that to you. But hopefully we did cover some of the things, even though I have things popping in my head I probably didn't even talk about. Like, oh yeah, it's not just the cold cranking amps. Cold cranking amps is what we use to compare the batteries, but this is how unscientific it was. I didn't go into the fact that cold cranking amps don't necessarily define what gets delivered to the car in every scenario. It's how the battery's built. It's how the terminals are either cast or welded, and how thick those are, and how the plates are put together, and how they're assembled. There's so much that goes in the batteries that can really define how they perform in the real world. Cold cranking amps is just one of those things it's a way to compare one to the other. It's not a perfect comparison, but it's an available comparison, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what we went with. We didn't dig into the utmost detail of what makes every battery different. Maybe someday we'll do that if there's interest. But in the meantime, that's what we got. It's all based on experience. Same with the chargers. You know, I didn't sit here and research each one of these so I could talk a lot about them. I just grabbed them off the shelf, threw them here, and talked about them. Told you how I've used them, how I've found enjoyment or discouragement with them, things I don't like about them, things I do like about them. This one, you know, so far I like it. It's relatively inexpensive, but I haven't had it long term. I think it'd break tomorrow for all I know. So stuff like that. You know, I'm not necessarily breaking it down super scientific, but I am sharing the experiences that we've had here. So if you've made it to the end, thank you very much. Hopefully you skipped around at least. I mean, even I'm not going to watch the whole thing, but just kidding. But in all reality, I do appreciate it. We're going to try to get some more cool videos here on Vortex Garage for you. And well, if you haven't already, you know I got to say it. Go ahead and subscribe. But also check us out on Instagram, because that's where you're going to see the latest and greatest, whether it's our Spitfire, batteries, dogs, stuff like that. It's all on our Instagram at Vortex Garage. Until next time, we'll see you later.